All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our incredible first keynote speaker. I'm really excited to introduce him as he is about to take the stage. But for now, why don't you drop in the chat, say your hellos, good mornings. And while we're in here, why don't you give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed that first session? How'd you like that rap I did? That was totally unintentional and completely unplanned. Oh, Orlando, let's go. Nice. Good morning. Good morning. There you go, Kenji. All right. Awesome. You missed it. Oh, no, missed it. Well, I'm going to have to do it again live in person the next time. That's the only other way I'm doing it. Please don't do it again. Totally joking. You know what? It was worth a shot. All right, cool. So as you guys are all kind of coming in. Oh, Lee. Hey, what's up, man? It's always cool to see the names in there of people that I've actually met in person. So it's always nice. Hey, Justine. I know Justine liked that one. Justine is the real, by the way, MVP of rap songs, low key. I now know about it. So cool. All right. So guys, I really am excited to introduce the next speaker. I have heard about Kenji a lot in the background between Blake Oliver and a few of the other folks that all hang out together and everything. So the name has popped up here and there. I always wanted to meet him. And I finally got the chance to do that at the Bridging the Gap conference in Denver. And Kenji is honestly one of the most fitting person for the clear the chaos, find your calm, because I got the vibe this guy is so chill and just such a good person to know and learn from some of his sessions. And now being able to bring it to all of you guys, being able to learn how to scale in a calm way. And I think we all need to strive to learn from him. I myself certainly do too. He's also the founder of Acuity and the OG cloud-based firm before CAS was even a thing. So enough out of me, though. Let's bring Kenji on to here. I really can't wait to hear what he has to say. So take it away, Kenji.
Thanks, Yuri. Very kind introduction. I'm not sure how chill I am. I mean, maybe in some cases, we'll try to figure that out together. But I really do appreciate jumping on with you, man. So yeah, I love the platform here. I've got some slides to share. Those popping up. Let's see. There they are. Awesome. Well, I will attempt to move through these, but again, super happy to be here and excited to kick things off here at WorkflowCon. It's fun seeing everybody out there. All right. What a great couple of days y'all have in store. I love that we're kind of being given an opportunity to do this from the comfort of our own spaces. I know all the introverts and the homebodies are definitely loving that. And even me, like an extroverted, like lover of travel, I even enjoy breaks from this time of year to get a chance to kind of get off the road here right around the holidays. But I'll say that my only challenge is that I am very accustomed to speaking like in a physical room with people in it. I really prefer conversations over just having like one-way dialogue. So if you've been to any of my live sessions before, you may feel like it's more like a game show host than a professional speaker. So I will definitely be asking some questions for all of you to answer in the chat. So be looking for those. I love the platform we're on. As I kind of dug into it a bit here, it looks like there's lots of opportunity for us to dialogue. So that's making me feel better. And I would really, really love for y'all to ask questions as we go. And I'll be trying to bounce through my notes and through slides and things. So hopefully there's some folks who are helping me monitor the chat. Maybe Yuri and Tossin can do that because it's not questions. When questions come up, they are not an interruption for me. Like, right. I'm here to give you as much takeaway value as possible. And when you do like one of these keynotes, like you're making a big guess that hopefully what you're saying is valuable, right? But if you give me feedback and questions as we go, I can kind of audible, steer, make a few pivots in the directions that are going to be most valuable to you. So hopefully that makes sense, right? Hopefully we can do all of that. But let's get into it. I'm Kenji Kuramoto. I've spent, gosh, about 20 years building an outsourced accounting and CFO firm called Acuity. We grew it from zero, and Yuri mentioned well back before we even knew what CAS was. We were doing that to a kind of a national practice. As just this year, I personally stepped out of it after completing an exit with some new partners. And so I get teased a lot these days. All my friends like to ask, like, how's retired life? You know, things like this. But really these days, I'm been doing some investing in and advising accounting tech startups. And so I serve as an advisor to companies in our ecosystem who are trying to make tools that actually help firms. So I've lived out there in your world. I was a firm owner up until a few months ago. I was a CPA, even though I let that lapse a few years back. I was even a bookkeeper, controller, and CFO even a few more years before that. So all this fun that we enjoy in the accounting profession, right? The deadlines, the messy processes, the hiring, the technology that keeps changing. Like, I've experienced a lot of those. I've made most of the mistakes you can make while growing a firm. And really today, I just want to share, how we learned as a firm to move from all this chaos to clarity. And not just because the work got easier or something, but actually we got a bit better bit by bit at building systems to let us think clearly and lead well and really kind of protect our energy. Okay. Let me move through this. Got a little bit of a tech challenge on my side. Hold on one second, folks. There we go. Okay, we're back. I think we're back at least. Okay. Thanks, y'all. All right. So this is what exactly, this is right here, what exiting your firm looks like every single day since I've been gone. Just kicking on the beach with my beautiful wife, headed to some beach bar for cocktails, like rinse and repeat, each day, just after the other, right? Yeah, really not so much. I really kind of thought life would be kind of quiet. And ironically, that's when I realized that the noise wasn't just client deadlines or team member challenges or Slack issues. A lot of that noise was me. I realized that actually I'm probably the biggest agent of chaos in my own life. I'm sure others, when you think about it, may feel the same way, even though we all have other agents of chaos. Like I just know myself. The way I chased experiments, the way I loved motion. I mean, that energy really helped us grow. It also created a lot of chaos when we didn't have the structure to absorb it. So if you've ever felt like your firm is loud, even when the calendar looks normal, like you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just doing hard work at scale without enough signal filtering. You're just being a founder. You're just trying to grow and do something different. And so whether you're in the trenches dealing with clients, whether you're building a firm, trying to relax on vacation, or you're in a big transition in your professional life, calm and clarity really does not come easy. So when we talk about like chaos, like I don't mean total disaster. Like, no, don't get me wrong. I took us to the edge of disaster a few times. We're going to get into a couple of those situations we'll talk through, and I'm happy to answer all the questions about them. But I do mean the constant churn that comes with growth. More clients, more services, more software, more expectations. Every firm I know is trying to do more faster with fewer mistakes and happier teams. That's just a lot to have to hold for any one of us, no matter where you are inside of that firm, whether you're a team member, whether you're the leader, it's just challenging. And so what I've learned is that calm doesn't show up after the busy season or after the next system rollout. Calm is something we have to intentionally build in the way that we operate, through structure, through rhythm, and through kind of better listening. And that's what the session's about, is how accountants can scale without feeling like the firm is running you. I'm wondering how many of you out there have ever felt this, like that this job you were in or this firm you were building some days feels like this massive accomplishment, like this huge source of pride. I know I felt that. And then the next day, it feels like your own personal prison that you constructed. Anybody feel that way? Maybe today you're feeling that way. Maybe I'm sure many of you are. Drop some notes in the chat. Drop some great gifts. Shout it out. Let us know. Because I promise you that you are not alone in this. And our world noise looks like this: compliance dates, client expectations, tech migrations, hiring and training, quality control, scope creep. And now we get the lovely AI questions we get to deal with like every single week, if not every day. And so I just hate to be the bearer of bad news, but in this wild world that we live in, it's not really going to get any quieter. So our job is to build systems that help us separate all this, the signals really out there from all this noise. And I think what matters today, what can wait, and what we should simply ignore are just ways we're trying to kind of cut through everything that's coming at us. And that's where clarity comes from. It's not like silence. We're not going to get complete silence. It's really from just kind of smart filtering. Okay, so I want to use some specific experiences we had at Acuity where we were trying to walk this fine line between chaos and clarity. And we'll do this from the perspective of when as a firm, we were really growing and scaling rapidly. And so let's start with this first act that we'll call growth. I mean, growth is super fun, right? Who doesn't love growth? It's new clients, new wins, you're adding to your team, the entire team's kind of buzzing. And like candidly for me, this was always the most exciting stage in our firm's development. I think many founders, if you have a founder mentality, you're entrepreneurial, this is the space you just love. And that is me. But growth without structure has a dark side to it. Without that structure, you're looking at things like rework, churn, margin erosion. And I think one of the most challenging is just burnout. We hear a lot about burnout these days and what it's doing to people within our profession, and all of us have probably experienced in some way or another. And so there is a dark side to it. So let's kind of talk about a situation where we had to learn this the hard way. This here is a picture. Oh, there it is. This here is a picture of our sales team. I love seeing this picture because it reminds me of those days that when we were together, we had this super high energy with this really, really young team. It's just so fun working and experimenting alongside of them. We were effectively, we're hiring as many people right out of college as we could, like into these junior sales roles. We were handing them a laptop, giving them a comp model that like incentivized booking as many appointments as humanly possible. Like we got to the point where we had, I think it was almost 20 people in sales, and they made up about a third of our headcount. I know. But we were crushing it. We had months where we were averaging a new client every single day. Like we were on this crazy growth path. Little side note, some of the Financial Sense crew who were in Atlanta may recognize in this office. It's in the Atlanta Tech Village where some of us have been neighbors with y'all. But this is a co-working space where the kegs were flowing, ping pong tables and video games, being played. Hustle culture was everywhere. And so like leads were hot, new client signing, revenue was popping, and the vibe, like the energy level was just so high. I loved it. And on the surface, there was like lots of success. Like, right, growth was really intoxicating, especially to someone like me who just loves that. But this is where the dark side comes in. We started noticing a problem. Despite this surge in like client count and the fact that revenue was really trending up, guess what our cash position was doing? Yeah, it was dwindling quickly. Our sales function was really expensive. And I know all of you are like, yeah, we're all accountants, Kenji, so are you. But apparently, like, no kidding, this is expensive. But when you look at the way that so many growth-oriented companies often run, this is what they do, right? They focus on sales as the first priority. and then figure out how to properly serve these clients. And we signed up for that same growth model. And so we know that while up front the customer acquisition costs were very high, when we recouped those costs and we wowed these clients over time, they were just going to get more and more profitable the longer we kept them. At least that was the theory. Well, guess what? But our cash issue wasn't just the cost of sales. We also had, what was known as, and some of you may have heard this, the leaky bucket issue. Has anyone ever heard that phrase, the leaky bucket issue? Or any of you ever had this issue in your firm? I hope not. There may be a few of you out there. Oh yeah, I see some yeses. I'm hoping the yeses for the fact that you heard it and that you didn't experience it firsthand. But underneath all of this huge run up in new clients, we were also losing clients at a record pace. Like we weren't onboarding well, we weren't setting expectations well, and we didn't have any retention mechanics built into our systems and processes. Our churn rate was going through the roof, and we realized later than we should have that we needed to retain clients under this model for 10 months before they were profitable. And when we did the math on all this, we were losing clients in 6 months. And it doesn't take much to realize that that's a horrible situation to be in. Like literally every single client we added actually was costing us money under the way that we were operating. So, just a terrible situation on top of what we thought was going to be something super exciting. So I guess a question, I'm curious, how many of you out there are tracking like churn rate, retention? Drop some things out there. I'm curious how many folks are out there looking at this. Yeah, I'd heard of it. Not tracking, no. Good. I see a mixture. Like it's a bit of no and yes. What I would tell you is, we're tracking ours great. Is you start taking a look at it. It can be very revealing. I know in some cases you feel like we're not big enough. I know which ones are coming and going, and you might, but it's a great pattern and habit to have in your firm if you can get a chance to do it. And especially if you're on a recurring model, those metrics will help you tremendously. And I think, probably Shram and the workflow or in the financial sets team could even talk about these. Like tech companies really focus on this a lot. If you've got a recurring revenue model, it's really important to look at churn. Don't get into the situation that we did, especially if you start growing a lot. It's really easier than you think, even being analytical accountants like we are, just to go, let's just keep looking at the growth rate of new clients and not look at the back end and where maybe missing things. So, okay, well, let's, well, of course, what happened to us at Acuity? This led to a reckoning that couldn't be avoided. And what I will always remember as the worst day ever. This was the one and the only time in our firm's history that we had to do layoffs. And not because the market was bad, not because of bad behavior or poor employee performance. We grew faster than our systems did. And what was like really painful about that was our intentions were right. They were good. We wanted to grow and the team was stoked for it, but we failed to put things in place to manage that growth. And that's just a painful sentence to say out loud because it's honest. It was 100% my fault. And on that day, I had to sit down and tell people that because of a mistake I made, they were the ones that had to leave. Like that's just awful. And while most people took it well, and we remain close to many of them, I do to this day, there were others who didn't, and I don't blame them for that. And some relationships, won't be repaired. And for someone who's a people pleaser like me, that just is going to haunt me forever. You can't avoid some of these tough decisions we all have to make. But I wish I would have been more clear in what was going on. I wish we had some systems and things in place. I think the lesson here is that growth is necessary. We all strive for it, right? But at its core, growth in itself creates chaos. And if that growth outruns the structure you're on, that chaos is going to overrun you, just as frankly. And many of you have probably been there. So again, I want to be clear that like it's not only is growth important, I actually believe it's necessary. Like it's a very important thing for all of us in our personal and professional lives. We don't want to be in a situation where we're not growing. We should be striving for it. Like it's exciting at its core. That's awesome. And you learn so much while you're growing. But without the guardrails, without process, without clear protocols, that energy of growth just cracks the foundation. Client trust, team well-being, margins, all those things are in horrible peril. So, after this horrific day was done, we asked ourselves like the following question, like, okay, how do we keep growing, right? Because again, I think it's important. We need to be growing, but how do we contain it? And so we decided to start scaling instead of growing. Like, right? Okay. You're probably like thinking, Kenji, you can't just like interchange two words that mean the same thing, expect a different outcome. Okay, fair. But I do think there's a nuanced and important difference between the two. So let's just walk through the way that we approach this at Acuity to understand like that type of switch we're trying to make. All right. So let's just kind of talk through where we were at growth. Our focus here was, our financial focus was let's drive more revenue. Okay. Underneath that, how did we get there? We were going to just hustle, experiment. It was perfect to be doing in this co-working space around a bunch of startups. We were just like in startup mentality. We wanted to make, but structurally, if you're going to move fast, it needs to be fairly informal or very flexible, or in our case, probably no structure whatsoever. That's very common. I'm not saying it's wrong if you don't have those, but that's what structure looks like. And the leadership side of this, again, was where I am most comfortable. And I'll make a few other EOS references. You can't come to an accounting thing these days, not here EOS. But, this is really a good spot for that visionary type leader, the typical founder entrepreneur. And because I was out there, I was definitely doing the like, let's freaking go. Let's just go and go. But as we just talked about, what are the downsides? What the chaos that comes in here? It's churn. For us, it was in this case, it was burnout. We had the sales team was maybe super high in energy when we're closing deals. On the back end, our poor onboarding team and our other team members, they liked getting new clients, but they were like, can you just time out a little bit? And so because there were these things moving so fast and people all over the place, just inconsistency in the way that we serve clients, all of that, kind of a bad cycle that just leads to that churn. And we knew that, the path forward was going to need to be putting some structure in place. How do we communicate better about what we're trying to do? And again, if you look at all this, this is such a founder's mentality, right? This is where, again, I was really pretty good at. But my strengths in growing also have a lot of those chaotic downsides. So we wanted to move to scaling. Now, here's what we think, why we thought scaling looked different for us, right? The financial focus changes here about like, let's get margins improved. Let's get that done. Let's have a mentality of being intentional in designing. The structure here needs to be much more defined and repeatable. What is that cadence, that consistency? And the leadership style should look more like an integrator, again, using EOS terms. This is an integrator or operator, someone who likes to come in and get things in order. And instead of the let's freaking go, let's just get better. Like, let's get better at doing things. And this can sometimes be a difficult transition depending on the type of natural leader you are or the way that you've built the organization. This was difficult for us. And there are still some challenges and problems when we're scaling, but they're different, right? And I'm going to talk about those and show you what those look like for us, even as we moved from a bad situation to what we thought was going to be an improved one. All right, Act 2. So here we go into scaling. So, okay, Kenji, great. You blew up the company by creating this churn issue during the growth period. Now, I'd like to see if you can move to scaling and fix this. And for me, the concept of scaling was intriguing, especially when I thought about the outcomes we wanted, right? Improve margins, get those retention rates higher. But the actual practice of doing it was pretty hard for me. It's like, like taking a beat to have to stop and design and build processes, roles, and tools like this sometimes don't feel like they fit the high energy, scrappy firm like ours, like it felt like more something out of like my old days of like Big Four. Like, yeah, you gotta build something that just seems too big for where you're at. And things seem to move a little slower. They're more expensive. They feel a bit more constrained. But like if you're kind of telling yourself, hey, this is what the big firms do, right? Like we can't just fly by the seat of our pants anymore. And a big challenge we experienced was that we didn't have any friends or peers in the accounting industry that actually had the same type of problem that we had in this case, or a lot of the others we created at Acuity. I mean, like who actually goes out and creates a 20-person outbound sales team in the accounting world? Like only crazy people like me. So we had to kind of go out and look outside of our industry for people that had the same crazy high growth and high churn issue. I don't know if anyone can recognize what I'm standing next to in this picture. Anybody get a sense of what that thing is over there? Drop it in the chat if you do. It's a giraffe. There you go, Yuri. There, I see some giraffe. There, yes, I see even people spelling it with the J because, which is, grammatically incorrect. Some of you may know Girave, J-I-R-A-V. They're a FP&A tool that's been in the space for a long time. And they were friends of ours from back in the early days. And sometimes you get a conference and see the fun giraffe around. There you go. I see some Giraffe users. Awesome. Yeah, we were Giraffe users too. And I was out. We were early users of it as well. I was out in their office. This is back when they were in the Bay Area. So I don't know what I'm looking at here through binoculars in their office with the Giraffe folks. But it was helpful because even though they work in the accounting space, they're a kind of a SaaS, more tech startup. And they were experiencing some of these same issues. I was talking to Martin, the founder, and the rest of the team about this. And they were a source of helpful inspiration, I would say. I mean, they caused us to realize that, in fact, at Acuity, most of our clients were like Giraffe. They were tech SaaS startups. And we noticed that SaaS companies had these customer success teams, like focused on retention. I was like, smart idea. That's what we're missing. A structured process-oriented function like called customer success to go in and fix churn. So super excited we kind of had this conversation out in their office. So we built this customer success function with a whole bunch of non-accountants. Why? Well, we wanted outgoing, extroverted team members who like talking directly with clients. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find accountants with those attributes. Unless you're Yuri, or if you have a number of others, I tease us. I tease us as a profession, but it's probably not the most natural posture, right? So let's just go build a function, a team that can go talk to clients. And we figured we also needed some new tools too, right? You can't like start a new process or structure without some new tools. You want those. So we bought customer success software. And the name of that software was called Customer Success. Perfect, right? It's like if the name of the software company is the exact same name of what it does, like, isn't that like, it's got to work, right? Didn't we all think that with like Bill.com and others? No, I can't. But so we got a new shiny tool called Customer Success, and we started launching this thing called Net Promoter Score, NPS surveying. Yeah, I know a bunch of you probably did this too. What's going to be better than getting direct customer feedback, getting right to the root of what we were doing or how we were doing on our client engagements. And so after seeing what these tech companies were doing and now emulating their processes and putting their structures in place, I was just super, super pumped to watch our churn rate just drop. Like I'm imagining it dropping not just to zero churn, but like negative churn. Y'all heard like negative churn? Like that's like when not only do clients like never leave, but they beat on your door asking for more services. I was like, this is going to happen. It's going to be so great. Like I was modeling out these scenarios and just looking at these fat margins come through and massive cash flow roll through the door. So this utopian version of Acuity that I think that, they would never have to have layoffs again. We'd just be flush with all the resources we needed. So it was super helpful being out in those offices and thinking through this with the folks. But I guess maybe a question to y'all, like, have you all ever borrowed or looked for ideas outside? Somebody stealing ideas from other industries. Like, again, we borrow from the tech community quite a bit. If y'all ever found inspiration, sometimes it's good to look outside of the accounting profession. We talk all the time with other fellow accountants, but if y'all ever looked outside of the accounting profession and found good inspiration, I'm curious if you found any good ones that you think we should look at. All the time. Real estate. Ooh, interesting. Okay, Shirley, I like it. Accounting Pinterest. We'll create a big mood board of all kinds of ideas. I love it. I love it. Fashion inspired. Naya, we know fashion inspires you, girl. Fashion every single day. And Yuri, of course, entertainment space with that hip hop mode you got. Love it. All right, let's keep punching through. So we put some structure in place alongside our growth, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in this scaling phase, right? Right. Okay. So, well, sort of. We knew that this whole like customer success concept was a bit foreign to an accounting firm. So we figured there'd probably be some adjusting. Like, and also every single time we've put in a new workflow or process in our firm, we've always gotten some form of resistance, right? It doesn't, I know y'all feel this. It doesn't matter how great the tool is. Like, yes, of course, like Financial Sense, I'm going to plug you guys, or any good tool you've had, there's resistance to it. And sometimes that the team themselves just doesn't want to make a change in their regular processes they become accustomed to. Sometimes it's managers or leadership who don't want to make the investment in the whole process of change management. I know, I'll just go through this, right? So even though this new structure was in place and experiencing kind of a few bumps in the road, we felt like we'd still see our churn rate start to go down, our margins start making some improvement. And we did, but not nearly as much as we expected, right? So here's what we were shooting for. We were shooting, with all these new structures in place, right? That customer success team, let's engage clients, let's be the friendly people helping solve problems. Let's use that shiny new software to create a proactive cadence, right? And to track issues. And man, that NPS is just going to be the greatest way to lean in and listen to clients. And, if we do all these things together, there's no doubt about it. We're going to retain clients forever, right? Well, here's what actually happened. These non-accountants that we hired, go figure, couldn't solve the technical problems. It just created, in fact, more gaps in so they were friendly and tried to be helpful, but they couldn't solve the technical issues when they popped up. We also had clients telling us, like, how many people are you throwing at us? Like, you introduced somebody else in customer success. Is that the same as my salesperson? But that's not who my controller is. And like, what about the bookkeeper? It just got confusing. The bright, shiny software, like many others, became one more expensive system to maintain that was really kind of more built for tech companies. And it became kind of easy for people just to say, hey, it's an issue with the software. And as we probably all experience, anybody who's used NPS, and not that there's anything wrong with it, the rates that people fill the surveys out were dreadful and very delayed. And you only hear about them when clients were actually pretty upset with you. So our intention there was to get closer to clients, but they actually started feeling much more distant. The team felt like they were managing dashboards, not relationships. And there's this new strange kind of chaos where everything like looked organized because there are all these things in place, but the work felt like harder. Like, what is going on? And that's when I learned something important is that you can't always copy someone else's playbook and expect it to fit. In many cases, you can learn from it, but if you just slam the whole thing in, be prepared for some challenges. What works for a SaaS company with loads of venture capital may not work for an accounting firm where trust and technical depth matter more than app usage. Man, another painful lesson we learned too late. The scaling only works when the systems actually fit who you are. And even though on paper, it looks like we took some steps toward maturity, in practice, it created distance. Like non-accountants struggling to solve accounting issues, dashboards filled with data, but not really any insight. And we were listening more, but I swear to you, we were just hearing less, which is a infuriating place to be. So kind of let's revisit like this earlier slide, and like fill in some missing pieces from what we painfully learned during the scaling stage. And that's that growth chaos is what happens when there's too little structure, right? When everyone's moving and improvising and just moving too fast. But the scaling chaos is what happens when you get the wrong structure in place, when the systems and the roles start fighting against each other, right? You get this feeling of like, why is everything so hard and bureaucratic? This used to be fun and nimble. Um, you get some lack of accountability. Well, that system didn't work exactly right. The customer success thing doesn't tie exactly into Salesforce anymore and not back into, our workflow tool. And so you a lot of pointing of fingers. We didn't know where the issues were coming from. And then ultimately, like you figure out that when you have the wrong structure in place and the systems and roles start, kind of fighting each other, like it's just still chaos. There's just lack of alignment there. And so the trick is figuring out when to stop adding new things and start refining the ones you already have. And I think that clarity when scaling is what happens when structure and culture finally line up, right? And lining them up means tweaking those systems and processes to match the culture, not the other way around. And so I know I'm curious. I know a lot of you are somewhere between these. If you think about maybe where you are as your firm are you kind of feeling like you're stuck in the growth chaos side or the scaling chaos side? Anything that kind of jumps out where you're like, or we're in a bit of both? Oh, did we lose some sound? Okay, sound. Okay, I see sound. Great. A lot of folks are feeling they're in chaos from both. I think you can be a bit of both for sure, depending on what kind of progress things you're on. At growth chaos, I'm seeing a few. Yeah, the scaling ones, middle of both. I think identifying, what are you working on right now? It could be like for us, it was a sales function, or it could be trying to implement a new tax solution. Understanding where you might live in this, where you need to have experimentation and where it needs to be more design and intention is helpful because it'll help you kind of identify where you're likely to kind of make some slip ups for sure. For sure. And it's hard when you can't get out of this. I'm seeing people mention like leaving old firms because of burnout from all these things. Like this is very difficult. I think we're all dip into these, but we have to find ways to kind of move ourselves out of them. Thanks for sharing some thoughts there. All right. Act 3. Here comes the clarity, right? Here's this thing that we've all been looking forward to. So how do we get from chaos to clarity with this whole sales explosion and churn and layoff and wrong structure and distance from the client thing? Well, I won't get into all the gritty details, but essentially it looked like this. We had to start working together as a team. And boy, this makes me smile seeing our team work together at one of our offsites. We didn't choose, we didn't throw the whole thing out. We didn't choose to stop growing because it was too hard. We didn't stop trying to put in better systems and processes. We just threw out what didn't work and we kept the things that did. It's kind of that simple because it was no longer a guess or a theory. We literally knew what did work and what didn't work because we could step back and look at our own failures and successes. And so what were some things we kept? Well, a relentless obsession with customer retention. Clear, hard data around churn, like why it happened, what services, what cohorts of clients, much more focused on our ideal client profile on the sales team and clear guardrails to make sure we don't drift off of those. We empowered technical team members who are given authority to fix client issues. They don't have to go through a bunch of different channels. We built our own internal but independent QA function that made sure that our work met our standards, which we consider higher than even client standards. And most importantly, we had deeper levels of input throughout the firm on workflow changes. We got a ton of value out of fighting through chaos, despite how hard and sometimes painful it was. And again, it took me a while to understand this, but clarity just isn't something you arrive at. It is something you practice over and over again. And while the firm became better at having a continual process of trying things over and over, I did find that I personally, as a leader, needed to make some changes in the way that I led at these kind of various stages. Like in the early stage of growth, your job as a leader is to experiment. Like you have to empower that. You need to try things, you need to break things, learn fast. It's kind of the good chaos. It creates innovation, right? But then as you start to scale, the job needs to be communicating. You need to teach the team how to operate amidst that noise. And then when you get to this clarity stage, you're not done. You haven't arrived anywhere. When you reach clarity, your job really becomes listening, not passively, but you're looking for ways to detect patterns. And that's where the mature leadership lives, in listening deeply enough to sense where to steer next. So if you're sitting here thinking like, I'm tired of experimenting, like that's good. It probably means you're ready for the next stage. And not everybody falls into like, this is really my evolution. If you're more of a integrator, operator, this probably looks a little bit different, right? You're going to be fantastic at that, I think, scaling area where your skills of building structure and frameworks really shine. I think you're encouraging people to experiment at the growth stage, and you're making sure at that clarity stage, you're allowing yourself and others to listen while you're making sure this thing continues to run at a solid cadence. And when I think back on that clarity phase of Acuity, it wasn't really quiet. It was quite the opposite. Like when you've got 150 employees like we did, all around the world, serving hundreds of clients using a fairly deep tech stack, that ain't quiet at all like that. But the noise changed, right? We started to see patterns. We could spot which problems were recurring, which ones were one-offs, which ones were symptoms of something else. And that's what clarity is. It's not really silence. It's a signal. It's being able to kind of rise above the noise and being able to tune into what really matters for your clients and your team and let the rest go. So again, I mean, calm leadership isn't silent. It's just really, it should be really signal rich. Well, here's kind of the funny part, I would say. Maybe not as funny, but like once you finally get that place of clarity, it feels weird. At least it did for me. Because for the first time, things are working like without you fixing them. Like you're not on every client call. You're not approving every transaction. You don't get to be the hero. And if you're like me, it just feels awkward. Like for years, chaos was kind of how I knew I was important. And so when calm showed up, like I mistook that for irrelevance. I remember going to one of our EOS quarterly offsites and I wasn't leading it. I wasn't really surfacing any issues. I wasn't really solving issues that came up. And I basically played like at that retreat, like bartender in the evenings. I cracked some jokes, asked team members how families were doing. I know those of you know me, like that sounds like you. It was weird. It was humbling. And I had to learn that leadership at scale isn't really about control. It's more about awareness and timing. And you are still leading, but it's different. You know, you're holding space for your people. You're stepping in only when you really need to. And that's tough for anyone who's used to being in the middle of everything. But I think this is where the real clarity begins. And you can trust your systems and your people enough to let go. And once you get comfortable with that posture, you start seeing things a little differently. Patterns emerge earlier, risks become visible sooner, and you can finally kind of step back far enough to make decisions that are strategic and not reactive. And that's where the calm leadership lives, in awareness and timing. It's not about being hands off, right? I don't want to say that. It's about being intentional about when to put your hands on. And I promise you, if it will initially feel like you're just not relevant anymore. And it is kind of tough. And this shift in posture from control to clarity really changed everything for us and for me. And again, it felt like my day-to-day involvement was getting less and less. I found that, as big issues emerged, I had capacity for them. And what are those kind of big issues that we had? Partner issues, acquisitions, lawsuits, mergers, outside capital, big issues that I had some space to kind of work on. And so when it became time to talk, I want to talk about what this looked like for us, because when it became time to think about what was next for Acuity, the good news is we weren't reacting to pressure or burnout. We had the calm to think long-term. And my business partners and I were at an offsite. Here we are, just the four of us. And we talked through what we believe was going to be best for Acuity in the next decade, for what's best for our team, our clients. And we talked through what also we believe was going to be best for each of us individually in our own personal lives. It was one of the most deep, thoughtful conversations I've ever had. And because we had, moments of calm, good fire pit and some wine there, that also helps. I think we were able to make a bold and wise decision. And so, again, for others who are out there exploring M&A or exits or some form of transition, like this section's kind of for you. And I'm happy to talk through any aspect of our deal. So feel free to queue up some questions here that I can maybe jump into near the end. But we got to spend a year evaluating potential partners, asking what would serve our team and our clients over the next decade, not just the next quarter. And there's nothing more chaotic than trying to run and grow a firm while also kind of courting some capital suitors. Like every day, you're juggling client work, internal meetings, and conversations with potential buyers. And it feels like you're living like two lives at once. In that kind of environment, emotions run high, excitement, fear, second guessing. And we needed every bit of space and calm we built to make the best decision possible. And it paid off, because in that process, the firm kept operating smoothly. And it's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about staying grounded to make clear decisions when everything's moving. We needed every ounce of that calm to stay thoughtful and keep the business running while we worked on the next chapter. And potential partners saw it. Leadership team that was calm, thoughtful, engaged. They saw a firm that was stable and growing. And our team saw it. We had our best year on record, all while shielding from all the crazy insanity of running an investment banking process to add more capital to our firm. And clarity didn't just feel good, it became a competitive advantage, Again, I cannot describe how exhausting it is to run a year-long exit process. If you've been there before, you get it. But amidst all this deal chaos, we still had some room to think. We weren't reacting just to fires. We were trying to design our future. And that kind of clarity took some discipline. I don't think we could have done it had we still been living in all the chaos. It told our potential partners, that we had something, valuable, something sustainable here. So calm wasn't just a mindset, it was a differentiator for us. And that's the real payoff of clarity. It gives you some distance, not detachment, but perspective. You're close enough to the work. You can still zoom in on an issue when you need to understand something particular. A good workflow tool will allow you to do that, but you can also get far enough away to see larger patterns. So here's me now, every single morning. You see me meditating in my Financial Sense sweatshirt, just completely full of calmness and clarity. Yeah, right. It was fun taking this picture, and you guys know that this is very far from the truth. But this is kind of what people expect when you get rid of serving clients and leading a team and running things. But it's far from the truth. The truth is, I've spent as many nights on the road as I have at home this past year. I've spoken at over a dozen conferences. I've been asked thousands of times, it feels like, about, hey, what are you up to these days? And I still haven't figured out a good answer. I get kind of embarrassed about that. I've had my kids move out of the house, then back in the house, and then back out of the house. Looked at hundreds of angel investment pitches I've taken on, too many nonprofit board roles. I lost my dad a few months ago, and it's kind of been living part-time with my mom to help her out. Like, me telling you about how to find calm feels kind of hypocritical right now, to be honest, especially when 2 weeks ago, I was at Intuit Connect, on the phone with my wife, almost in tears, just saying, I want to come home. I'm so exhausted and overwhelmed. And this is why I love the accounting profession and community. And I never tend to leave it, because we support each other with honest talk and hopefully experiences like this. I don't want to tell you that once you're not running a firm that life is peaceful, on a perpetual yoga retreat or something. My chaos right now continues to be a combination of events that I can't control, coupled with the fact that I'm still my own worst agent of chaos. And so I still need to keep methodically putting processes and people around me to help me be in a place where I can make good decisions for not just myself, but for the people near and dear to me. And candidly, I did not do a great job of this year. So if you got some good things that each of you use to kind of personally keep calm and out of the chaos, man, drop some things in the chat there and help your brother out. I could use it. So I guess if there's one thing I want you to take away from this session, is that calm isn't the reward at the end of growth. It's the thing that when you are in it, for however short or long a period of time that is, it does allow you to have clarity when others are lost, for you to be that solid rock when others need you. And I think this quote from Naval Ravikant says, it's truly a superpower, when you can stay calm. And because the firms we work in, and I think the world we live in, are not going to get any quieter or any less chaotic anytime in the future, this ability only becomes more important for each and every one of us. And so I'm just really thankful and honored that y'all would have me here today, and would love to kind of take a look through questions. I thought I was going to get more of a chance to kind of look through questions and answer them as we go. And so I'm going to try to queue up a few more things. What's the most important thing to keep in mind when trying to decide what to scale? Thanks, Shannon, for that question. What to scale. That's a good one there. I think take a look at what's important whenever you're aligned back with the culture and values of your firm. I think that's important. And you may be a very growth-minded firm. And so focusing on what to go build there is important. You may be one, I think of my good friend Keela, who has a firm. She wants to keep a certain size forever and wants to kind of keep it peaceful and calm. And so please make sure, that's where we got a little lost, is when we started emulating the processes of others, we didn't think about that it match up with who we were as a firm. That's where we got a little bit offline. I'd say look at that, what aligns with values, and anywhere you can give, our most precious resource we have, which is the time of those beloved team members. We can give them back time and help them in their daily work. I think those are places to be looking at to scale and put structure around. What KPI are critical to monitor when scaling? Thanks, Jay. In our case, there was an obvious one that we missed, right? That was more on the growth side of what was our churn rate, and did we know why, what was going on? What were the effects of growing so rapidly? I think when it comes to scale, which we talked about being slightly different, you're looking to make sure the structures are working. And so I think if I'd be looking at more speed to resolve around scaling, what throughput and things look like. If you're in that part of like making sure a structure we put in place, do we have more friction versus less? And so there are a couple of different ways. Again, it could be like, I remember when we were making improvements to the structure of our onboarding team, one of the key metrics we used to use was number of days in onboarding. We were just trying to make that process more efficient and put better structures. So we used to use number of days in onboarding on average per clients as a benchmark. But so look for things that were throughput, velocity oriented. I think around structure will typically lead you to a good KPI. All right, any others? What are the warning signs you are scaling too fast? And what is the canary in the coal mine to keep you calm? I think team members. I think the closer you can get to those who are serving clients, we got far away from that. I was spending so much time with our sales team under the situation we talked about that there were times when you have to, I think as a leader, encourage, I don't want to say push, but maybe sometimes push teams into an uncomfortable spot. And there may be some resistance, but usually somewhere in that resistance, as frustrating as it may be for you, the growth leader, there's some truth. There's some things that are not working quite right. And so even if maybe you realize you have to push forward, someone does not want to implement this new tool, you need to listen as much as you can. And so that creating that listening habit there is so important. When scaling fast and growing your team, how are you ensuring quality and efficiency with all the moving parts that come with rapid growth? Well, what we did with this, Jay, and I mentioned it briefly, is one outcome of creating customer success and outbound sales was we actually built our own Q&A team. We went back and looked at, we were very obsessed with what do clients think of us? And sometimes we don't get the most clear signals from clients. They don't want to fill out the surveys. They only complain when there's a problem. And sometimes, do you find that your clients don't know what good accounting looks like? And so we actually built our own team and rules around what we thought a quality engagement should look like. If someone were doing the accounting for us, an accounting firm, what does that look like? And so we tried to make as independent as possible, kind of a QA function that a little bit pressure tested us. Some people call this red teaming. You can run some pressure test some things that you're doing there just to make sure the quality is there. But we just found, again, we always want to get client input, but solely just client input can kind of steer you the wrong ways sometimes, because I think sometimes I'd almost trust all of you. That would be a great area. Maybe we should trade accounting services with each other as fellow peer accountants and get some ideas. That would be hey, over here, your onboarding kind of stinks. Or hey, gosh, I love the way that your bookkeeper or accounting managers do X, Y, and Z. It'd be super interesting, I think. So it looks like that's all the questions there. I would encourage you, please reach out to me. I'll be around at the conference. This is so much fun. I love seeing so many of you. If there's anything I can help you with, reach out to me. LinkedIn, I think I gave you my email on there. It's in the slide deck. Just take a look at it. I'd love to spend time with any one of you one-on-one and answer questions or help steer you away from some of the mistakes we made. But again, it's been a joy. You guys have a great awesome speakers coming up here soon. Super, super thankful to all of you, and thankful to Sharam, Tassin, and the whole Financial Sense crew. I hope you all have a great next couple days. See y'all. I love all the gifts emojis.